later when we get to the back of church. The altar is a very sacred place. It has been consecrated. The bishop consecrated this altar and has consecrated every Catholic altar, and every Catholic church is consecrated by a bishop with chrism, the oil of chrism. And it's consecrated, set aside for a particular purpose, the Mass. That's the only purpose for this altar, is the Mass. And so we don't put anything on the altar except what we would use for the Mass. For example, if we have a tour of the church, people would not put their purses or something on the altar. The workmen in here would not put their books, their tools on the altar. But these things are all things related to the Mass, and so this is okay. Any container which holds either the body or the blood of Christ is called a sacred vessel. And we treat them with special reverence as well. We would not just throw these things around, okay? We would treat them with reverence. In fact, the altar, we even kiss it, right, before and after Mass. We treat it special. So all of these sacred vessels we also treat with special reverence. So let's talk about the different kinds. First of all is ciborium. This is the ciborium. You all seen it, I mean, obviously. You may call it a communion bowl or something, but the right term is ciborium. And if you have more than one, it's ciboria. So there are probably 2 ciboria in the tabernacle right now. And the purpose of that is to hold the host, right? Hold the host. What is this?
Jealous.
What?
Jealous.
It's a trick question. It looks like a chalice, doesn't it? But it's got a lid. It also has a loose top. Screw that tight. I can screw that right on. Okay, I think I got it tight. It has a lid. That's not a chalice. It's just shaped like a chalice. But that's a ciborium. It's for holding host. And in fact, this is kind of a modern day ciborium right here. When I was growing up, this was the only kind you saw. And this is what went into the tabernacle to maintain the host. So that is another example of a ciborium. The next thing is the paten. Paten is from the Latin word for little bowl. This is a paten right here. Doesn't have a lid, right? It's just a bowl. However, this modern day one, you can put, it's designed so you can put this lid on there, and voila, it becomes a ciborium. Right? Just depending on its use, actually, I guess. But that is a paten. They can be also made out of crystal. This is not glass. We would not use just plain old glass for a sacred vessel. You would want to choose something that is precious. Okay, and these sacred vessels are made out of Polish crystal. You can't do that with glass, right? And so those are very delicate. They're very easy to break. Now here's another kind of paten. These were used so long in the church that people thought paten meant plate, but it really means bowl. These were used whenever we had the communion rail all the way across. Some of you older folks remember that. People would kneel on the communion rail. The priest would start on one end and give communion, 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 communion. When you received it, you got up and left. Somebody else took your place. So by the time he got to the end, these are all new people here, and he'd go back all the way over there and start over again. And the altar server would be going like this to make sure that a host did not fall under every single person. And what I tell folks every time I give this class is, if you were Steve Abishon in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, when you got to his cousin Charlie, you had to nick his Adam's apple just a little bit. Yeah, I was a bad guy. But that is a paten on a stick. It's kind of interesting. A chalice, now we get to the chalices. The chalice is a cup. And we make them look nice, right? We try. We do the best we can as human beings to make pretty things for God, right? I mean, God made gold. This doesn't impress him. What impresses him is that we tried our best. We didn't just make some shoddy thing. We made something, a piece of art, something that was the best we could do. That's what impresses God. So we have this one. We usually use these. Now these are not solid gold. I mean, these are gold plated on the inside. Okay? But they're not solid gold. I probably couldn't lift them. You can also use, like I said, the Polish crystal. Now, if you happen to have one made out of olive wood, this is kind of special. It comes from Jerusalem. Remember the guy who comes not once a year, he comes and sells things made out of olive wood that the Christians have carved, the Christians from the Holy Land. But we could not just put the precious blood in a cup made out of wood because it would absorb the precious blood. It has to be impermeable, and so we line it with gold, right? So that's lined with gold, but it's still olive wood from the Holy Land. I mean, that's kind of special, right? Pyx, P-Y-X is the way it's spelled. It's just something that you can carry the host in if you ever need to take the host out of church. Okay? If you're going to do, say, a communion service at the nursing home, you're going to want a big one like this. That'll hold about 50 hosts. But if you're just going to take, many people take a host, maybe to a sick neighbor after church on Sunday. If they're a Eucharistic minister, they'll receive maybe just one host, and it'll go in one like this. And then there's some in between too that you would use if you help Father on First Fridays to bring communion to the homebound. Those are called pyx. You don't want to just carry the host around in your hand. Or there was one lady one time that she said her neighbor was sick. Did she bring communion to her neighbor? And Father Dan was here, said, well, sure you can, because the lady was a Eucharistic minister. Of course you can. She said, I'll just wrap it in my Kleenex. No. We have pyxes in a drawer in there you can use, you know. You don't just wrap Jesus in a Kleenex. Next time you pull another Kleenex out and you drop it or something, I don't even want to think about it. Now let's talk about the monstrance. I'm going to have to go up to the altar to get this out. And while I'm here, let me explain how you get things out of the tabernacle. Obviously, you put the key in. There's no button or anything. The key itself opens the door. So you turn the key to the door opens. When you open the door, you bow to Jesus or genuflect, whichever you can do. So I would bow. Notice I didn't bow before I opened the door. Why would I be bowing to a door? Right? That's the way to kind of remember what order to do these things. You're bowing to Jesus. Okay? So you bow to him and you reach in and get out what you want to get out. This is a consecrated host. Okay? So obviously we're going to treat it very specially, but it's inside this little lunette. A lunette means little moon. Luna, lunette, right? Little moon. And it fits inside this, which is the monstrance. And this is how we, I hate the word display. That's not quite right, but expose the Blessed Sacrament to everybody in the congregation. We put it in this. And it is, again, one of those things that is just as nice as we can make it. There's Jesus the Good Shepherd up top, a couple angels there. Down here, here's a guy with a sword and a book. Saints have what are called attributes. Artists use attributes, and you can tell a lot of times who the saint is by the attribute. That's St. Paul. He was beheaded with a sword, and he has the book because he wrote parts of the Bible. And on the other side is Peter. You have to look really, really close. He's holding keys, because Jesus told him that I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven, right? And so we make it as pretty as we can. And if anybody wants to get closer and see, you're welcome to. It's hard to put it so everybody can see. There's a little knob right here that you turn until it opens. There's like a little railroad track in there that this flat piece right there just slides right in that railroad track. Like that. Close it, turn that again so that it's locked. Very simple, really. Now what if you have to put another host in? This part right here, this thing that looks like a treble sign right there, it folds down like that. And when it folds down, this pops open. Okay, I'm going to be very careful I don't drop the host. But then when you close it and you pull this back up, it pushes against the glass and holds the glass shut. There's no catch or anything. It's just that little S-shaped thing there. Okay, so I'm going to, does anybody want to see this before I put it up? Everybody, I think most of you might have seen it already. We've all been through this class before, almost all. So, when you put either that or when you, after communion, when you bring the host back to the tabernacle, you bow to Jesus, not the doors, and then you close the doors. Okay? That's pretty simple, isn't it? Logical. If things are logical, they're a lot easier to remember. So that is the monstrance. When we expose Jesus for adoration, he will sit on this little shelf right there. A lot of you might not have even known that shelf is in there, but it's there. It sits right there, and there is a curtain that hangs on these hooks right there that gives a nice backdrop so you can see. Otherwise, with that gold monstrance and the gold tabernacle, you almost can't see that he's there. He's camouflaged. Okay, I already talked about that. Let's talk about a couple other things. These are not sacred vessels. This is a purificator. It purifies. That's what it's used for, obviously. Twice during the Mass, it's used when the priest washes his hands, symbolizing to be cleansed from sin, and he dries them with the purificator. The servers bring that over. The other time during Mass is when the precious blood is being distributed, and you wipe the cup. Okay? We're going to talk about that in just a little while. This is a corporal. Where do you think the word corporal comes from? Any thoughts? Corpus. Where? Corpus. Corpus, exactly. Body. Body. This is spread on the altar. It just spreads out, top, bottom, left, right, just like that. The servers all know how to do that. You'll never have to do it as far as I know. So that if we do happen to drop something, we try to do everything with the host over a corporal. If this is the tablecloth, this is the placemat. Okay, you can kind of think of it in those terms. And then folding it up is side, side, top, it's backwards. that's a corporal. And those obviously are not sacred vessels, although they will hold the body whenever I distribute to the three different ciboria, and I drop one, it drops on the corporal. So it is kind of a sort of a sacred cloth. I know that's not definition terminology. The tabernacle key, I already showed you that. I'll show you where we keep it in the back, so if you ever have to come over and get communion. I know you don't maybe have a key to the church or the sacristy, but if you have to bring communion to somebody, you can get that command or borrow a key to the church from her and get it. Any questions on any of this? So let's go back to our seats then. We'll keep on moving.